Sense your movement. Lord, that we would know you in a deeper way and be forever changed this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Go ahead and take a Bible, if you would, and turn to the book of Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 6. It's a verse that if you've been in church for any length of time, you probably heard it. It talks about the armor of God and how we're supposed to be ready for the battle. But I want to start just a little bit before that. And as you're turning to Ephesians chapter 6, I want to ask you a question. And feel free to answer out loud if you want to. If you were to name something that is incredibly important, maybe the most important thing to you, what would it be?
God's love.
God's love? See, it's a little scary that somebody didn't say family, but maybe you're having a tough time with family today. I get it. What else? See, I want to tell you about and kind of share with you. Anybody got anything else? I don't want to run too quick. I'm kind of excited about this. Can you tell? I'm sorry?
Family too.
Family, yeah. One of the characteristics or one of the qualities of God, and He has so many. I mean, He's holy, He's mighty, He's faithful, He's loving, He's compassionate. You can list all of those. There's one that just stands out to me. And for me, it's just hard to grasp. It's hard to understand because I don't see it a lot in the world. And part of the time I don't even see it in me. And so it's kind of hard. But God being trustworthy, being able to trust in Him no matter what, I think is an incredible testimony to who He is. And it's one of the characteristics that I so enjoy and I so want to pursue. When you're trying to define something that's important, sometimes we get a little short-sighted. Would you agree? This means yes, this means no. Not short-sighted. We happened to be walking out of the convention center. We had to go to Fort Worth for some work stuff, and we were there at the convention center, staying in a hotel there. And so we walked across back and forth. Did you notice? I don't know if you noticed, but it's kind of hot. And did we mention earlier that I hate hot? I mean, I really do. There's very few things I could say I hate, but I hate hot. Anyways, we walk out of there, and we're going to the convention center and doing some stuff, and I don't know, it was 6:30, 7 o'clock Friday night. We're going to walk out, and we identify something that's important. Cheesecake. Well, we were going for ice cream, but we couldn't find ice cream. The ice cream place was closed, but we knew that there was an important dessert to be found. And so when you walk out of the convention center, it's all concrete. Have you noticed that concrete absorbs heat? And so it's just like this radiating heat. Now, any smart person would have driven, right? Stay in the air conditioner a little bit longer. Actually, a really smart person would have just went away from the dessert. I know that's what you were thinking, wasn't it? But that wasn't me. And so I'm looking at this. So we go about 5 blocks, and we go over to the cheesecake place, and I get a pineapple upside down cheesecake.
Well, that's a good one.
It is a good one. It is a good one. So there's kind of a line there, and so we just load up our little cheesecake and go back. But it got me thinking about trying to decide between good and best. Do you know that well, let me just ask you this way. I probably shouldn't do this on tape because somebody will ask me about it later, but do you think God ever did something that was not necessarily good, but it wasn't a sin?
No. He's always good.
So think about Genesis. Think about when God created man, and then He looks at man and said, "It is not good for man to be alone." And what He was doing is creating the premise that there's a best. And the best is, I'm going to create marriage. I'm going to give a helpmate. They're going to be a team. They're going to be a unit. So sometimes we settle for it. Please hear this. You can write it down, question me about it if you want. Sometimes we settle for good. It may not be a sin, but it's just good. And God has great in mind. How do we get to great? How do we get to great if we continually settle for good? We don't. Because we're continually settling for the good. What we can get, what's closest. Paul was kind of in that situation here when he's talking in Ephesus. He's in a situation where he wants to do good. He wants to go see those people in Ephesus. They mean so much to him. He's ministered to them. He's been their pastor. He's loved on them and adored them. And he's preached to them. He's raised them up. He's their spiritual father. But he doesn't have time. He feels this desperate need to be at Jerusalem and be there by Pentecost. And that means just bypassing, sailing by, going past Ephesus and getting on to Jerusalem. Now, here's the tricky part. The difficulty might be that once he gets to Jerusalem, he's probably going to get thrown in jail. He may get beaten. There's some bad things going to happen, but he feels compelled to get to what is great, what God has compelled him to do, even though it doesn't look like the best. See, it would have been easy for him just to say, well, I just won't go. I'll just kick back. I'll just go by here. Be safer anyways. But see, what Paul does, and what he tries to warn those in Ephesus about is, he's trying to call their attention to understand that there are going to be desperate times coming. That there's going to be difficult times coming. Can I give you a sidebar here? Can you make a small note? Do you know that difficult times are coming?
Yes.
They are. And I'm not trying to be gloom and doom. I'm really not. You'll see through this message, I believe God's got a plan and a provision to get us not only through that, but to get us to great at the end of that. But we've got to do a couple of things as we go through that. Paul, he compels his readers to understand that the approaching calamities are going to happen. They're real, and they have an opportunity to prepare for them. Wouldn't it be nice to feel prepared? Is it just me? Am I the only one that doesn't feel prepared sometimes? I have plans. I don't know if you people realize I'm a note-taking, list-making person. I have plans for the week. And it never works. Ever. I'm not talking about it's not closed like there's a small deviation. I never get to the list at all. I don't understand. I don't feel prepared. So how do we get prepared? See, everyone is going to endure battles, and we're going to endure those difficult times. And we have to realize that the battle that we're approaching, that we're involved in, is a battle between good and evil. It's not the people around us who have caused it. It's not other aspects. It's not even the government. You're going to hear a little bit more about that in a moment, because there's some comedy involved in this. Because, I'm just going to tell you, are you keeping up with the electric vehicle stuff? Nobody wants them? Well, probably true. Whether they want them or not, I got a question for you. And this is more about God's trustworthiness. It's hard for me, admittedly, openly, I will admit, it's hard for me to trust those in governmental positions. Because sometimes I get the impression, all the time I get the impression they have an ulterior motive. And sometimes it comes true. I was reading about House Bill, what is that House Bill? 233. That Sacramento is the governmental seat for California. They are bringing this bill forward. And there's an aspect of EV, the electric vehicles, that I didn't quite understand. I know that we see things differently about whether it's computer chips or mining or how far they'll go or all this stuff. And maybe they're great, maybe they're not. I really don't know. I have no clue. I can't even get my mind to figure out whether they're good or not, to be honest. But I did find this interesting. They want to make into the bill, this House Bill 233, they want to make it where every new vehicle has bidirectional charging. Now that caught my eye, because bidirectional charging was this great tool, and it's a sales pitch for you, and I'll help you out so when somebody asks you about it, you can be well informed. Okay? So what they do is, when you have a vehicle, it's an electric vehicle, you got this bank of batteries, this charging station, this place. When you get home, you can plug it into your house if you were without electricity, and it will provide electricity for your house. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, it's really neat. The House Bill 233 is back to the trustworthy thing, because I don't really trust the way things are going. That bill would make bidirectional charging mandatory on all new vehicles sold, not because they were looking out for you and want you to have electricity at home, but so when you charge that car to 95% or 100% or whatever, and that night, should they have an electrical shortage somewhere other than Sacramento, say down in San Diego, they'll just take your electricity out of your car. Pretty cool, huh? And I see all this time, I don't know much about electric vehicles. I mean, I know a little bit, but I don't know much. But I kept wondering, how are we going to do this? They say it takes so much energy to charge an electric vehicle, so much more than running electricity. And there's nothing more important to a Texan than electricity to run our air conditioner. So how's the infrastructure? Well, now I know. They're counting on you providing the infrastructure with your electric vehicle. What was her name? Patricia something. I wrote it down. Patricia Poppe, P-O-P-P-E. She's the CEO of PG&E. It's the electric company in California. She said California power grid will have to expand in order to meet the demands of more energy. So the lawmakers said, hey, we'll just expand it. We'll expand it to your home so you can provide electricity. That's pretty cool, right? You feel very thankful, right?
Yeah.
You can trust that they will only take what they need, right? And there's one caveat to this before I move on, and I'm not trying to throw rocks at anybody in particular, just throwing rocks.
I got it quick.
Well, hey, just think about this though. What happens to a battery, whether it's your phone or whether it's anything else? What happens to the battery when you charge it?
You drink.
Charge it. Eventually, it stops working.
Yeah.
So who's going to pay for my battery now that it's going to stop working?
You are.
You are. Anyway, so what was the question?
Does the meter run backwards when they're taking your electricity?
No, sir. No, sir. In this, it got me to thinking about trustworthiness. And it got me to thinking about, I'm so thankful that when I go to God, I don't have to sit down and try to understand things that are above my head. Because God knows what's going on. He knows what you need. He knows where you're going. He knows what obstacles and what things are going to befall you this week. So how do I identify what the important thing is to make sure that I'm on the right page? Well, I gave you a hint to it a while ago. It's trusting in God's trustworthiness. Because people will let you down. Events will let you down. Jobs that you thought would be there won't be. I thought it was interesting this week as I read about the college football. There were a couple of teams at colleges that built $175 to $200 million stadiums, counting on money. And now the only couple of schools left in the Pac-12, and they have no money. What do you do? See, I don't think we can trust in institutions. I don't think we should trust in commodities outside of God. I think we really got to figure out a way to trust God. To really, truly be those who pursue and plan for and participate in God's trustworthiness. Because that's the thing that's going to get me through. It's the thing that'll keep me sane at night. It's the thing that'll let me rest a little bit at night. Well, how do we do that? I'm glad you asked. Verse 10, chapter 6, the book of Ephesians. You were kind of worried now. That was all the introduction. Verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. So we're looking at, and he says there in verse 10, finally, brethren, be strong in the Lord. It's this admonition to be strong in the Lord. It gives the indication, it gives the implication that everyone can be strong, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now some of you are a lot stronger than the rest of us, and some of you have a much stabler foundation. Some of us, and I've admitted this before, and sometimes I feel like I teeter between crazy and creative. And I'm not sure how wide that line is at times, or how much it deviates. Anyway, so verses like this mean a lot to me. It means a lot for me to know that God is saying to Wayne personally, He's saying to you personally, or you personally, you can be strong. I have a plan for you. And it doesn't hinge on how strong you feel. I like that. I like that a lot. It doesn't hinge on how strong I feel, because what does he say? Be strong in the power of his might. And please hear this. I'm going to say it with all the love that I can muster. But stop holding everything up. Stop trying to be the pillar that holds everything together. Lean on God. Let God be the power that directs you, and you will go longer. You will sustain more. You will be more productive than you've ever been. And it'll help you to clarify those things that are truly important. Don't get caught up in the idea that you have to do everything. Be everything. Hold together everything. Do you know that's why we have spiritual family? That was an amen point. There's only a couple of them in the message, but if you want to chime in, that was one. Maybe I should warn you on the next one. We need to do it in the power and the might of God Himself. And He says there, still in verse 10, finally, my brother, be strong in the Lord, in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor. He says, be active. Take an opposition to those things that are going to come. Equip yourself in such a way. So he's saying, be strong, first of all, and then take a balanced stance. You know what we tend to do? Or maybe it's just me, but I think we all do it. We tend to react according to the height of whatever we're enduring. That's why when we hear bad news and we get that bad diagnosis, suddenly everything changes and our life is different. We have a job change, or we have relationship issues. Everything kind of alters. We tend to fight things from the fire instead of the preparation. God's saying take a balanced stand. He says, first of all, putting on one piece of armor is not enough. Put on the whole armor of God. Put it all on. And I know a lot of times when you hear these messages, I'm not going to do that this morning. A lot of people go through and they tell you about the breastplate of righteousness. They tell you about and they go through every one. We're not going to do that. This is about the action of prioritizing what's important, choosing what's important, and then begin to put it on. Does it make sense? So put on the armor, the whole armor, and put on the armor that enables you to stand against the wiles of the devil. So what's the flip side of that? The flip side of that is either put on the whole armor of God, because you know that God knows stuff that you haven't even seen yet, right? He knows stuff on the horizon that you haven't even seen yet. Back to my little story about walking to get, I think we were walking to the Walgreens. I can't remember. Anyway, we start walking down the road and we hear somebody yelling. Now there's two things that people do when people start yelling. You either turn and look or you turn away, right? I'm kind of deciding which one of those is, and then I hear this loud pop. And I'm thinking, oh, this can't be good. So I don't know what's going on. Well, I turn to look, and there's a guy sitting on the curb, and he's using it. I think it's his shoe, but he's mad at whoever's around, even though there's nobody around, and he's banging his shoe. And I'm going to say something now that please understand this. I believe that God has a provision for that person. Well, you're like, well, maybe he's got a chemical imbalance. Maybe he could have all those things. I'm not discounting that. I believe God has something for that person. I believe He has something for the person standing next to the casket who's lost their loved one. I believe He's got something for that person who's struggling with chemo at 3 a.m. and no one else is around. I really believe my God's a miracle worker. He's got stuff that will help us take a balanced stance in life. You ever wonder why we as Americans, and we in our world especially, but we as Americans are the most medicated society there is? Now, I'm not saying that medication isn't necessary. There's times when it is. But what I'm saying is my God has provision. And He has a plan. And He has a process. One of the things I learned about medication, I don't do well with medication. Okay, I'm just not smart enough to remember to take it. Maybe that's the thing. Anyways, I did learn that when probably 17, 18 years ago, I had knee surgery, and there was a tumor about the size of a lemon behind my kneecap. And every time I moved my knee, the kneecap would pop to the side. Anyway, so eventually, I went to the doctor. All of you that thought I never went to the doctor, I went.
Okay.
back then. Anyway, so I go
Was that
and
the last time?
they cut it out. Do what?
Was that the last time?
No. I went once after. No, I'm joking. But they cut it out and took care of it, and they gave me some pain pills. And he said, I'm going to get you set up with therapy, and we're going to have you come up, drive to Abilene and have therapy. Okay, great. So I go to therapy, and I was there a week, and I'm like, I can do this stuff at home. I don't need to come back here. Just tell me how to do it, show me how to do it, which is probably not the best approach. So I started doing it at home, and I got to be honest with you. There were days when I needed a couple of those pain pills to be able to do the therapy that I needed to get better. There were days when I would lay on the bed doing those exercises with tears rolling down my eyes because I wanted so bad to get healthy. So don't misunderstand. God can use anything, any avenue, but let's make sure we're following God. Does that make sense?